Good morning, everybody. We'll start. Okay, sure. Okay, dear colleagues, guests, and students, our friend on social media platforms, I welcome you to this last day in the Arab Center for Research and Policy Studies 2023 Winter School on Political Culture here in Doha. It is my pleasure to introduce our last but not least guest speaker, Dr. Sari Hanafi, that we are honored to have with us today. Dr. Sari is professor of sociology, director of the Center for Arab and Middle Eastern Studies, and chair of the Islamic Studies program at the American University of Beirut, Lebanon. He is also the president of the International Sociological Association and the editor of Idafat, the Arab Journal of Sociology. He has written numerous journal articles and book chapters on sociology of religion, the connection of moral philosophy to social sciences, the sociology of forced migration in the case of Palestinian refugees, and the politics of scientific research. Among his recent co-authored books are the Oxford Handbook of Sociology of the Middle East, Knowledge Production in the Arab World, The Impossible Promise, and The Rupture Between the Religious and Social Sciences from Oxford University Press, to name only a few of his contributions. In 2019, he was awarded an honorary doctorate by the University of San Marcos, and in 2022, he became a lifetime correspondent fellow of the British Academy. In sum, Professor Hanafi has made significant contribution to the field on the region from within the region and have been recognized for his work. We are honored to have him here with us today to share his insights and perspectives on the topics of understanding political culture in the Arab world through religious and moral congruence. Dr. Safi, the floor is yours for around 45 minutes. Then after, we will have Q&A sessions.
Thank you, Abdel Karim. I'm so honored to be invited by the Arab Center, and this is the 10th day of the winter school. I think you have lectures fatigue, so I know I need to be provocative to woke you up in this 10th days. So let me quickly go into, so I see now my PowerPoint is there. So if you like, I try to bridge between the problematic of this winter school political culture and how we can understand specifically the polarization of our society and polarization of elite formation in the Arab world through the religious and moral congruence. So if you like, simply, I will start by a question: how much does religiosity impact political culture? And I think there is two camps. And let me expose my positionality. So I think in the line of Marcel Mauss and Karl Polanyi that in fact we cannot understand society as a separate compartmentalized spheres, but that society function like connected spheres traversed by a total or by common logic that encompass all the totality. So you have people who think that religion doesn't matter, that society you have the sphere of religion aside, dealing with the death, birth, some rituals in life, while the secular should deal with the social, the economic, the political, and the culture. And you have other group, those who believe that Islam dinun wa dunya, everything. So through the religious, through the fiqh, they can influence and impacted all the spheres of the economic, the social, and so on. I think what I would like to argue today that if we take a category of higher category of higher than the religious and the secular, the ethics. The ethics can be a repertoire where we can accept that religion through ethics, secular through ethics, humanism through ethics will impact all the spheres. So if you like, this is, if you like, my theoretical premises for this paper. So I will first deal with the concept of religiosity through the reflection, how to understand religious congruence in a specific context. I will argue that there is so much evidence that forms of religious congruence are not related only to how social actors conceive religion, but also the other spheres of life. This is why every time I talk about religious congruence, it's really inherent part of the moral congruence. And I will show, specifically in this paper, that in spite the lack of secular systems in the Arab world, you have a serious process of what I will call a practical partial secularization from below. And in fact, before I start, I think the amazing work of Dr. Azmi Bshara in his work about secularism, about religiosity, etc., tremendously affect me. It looks like a negative way. Influence me in really the way I see the secular and the religious. I should, and specifically to understand how that we should not stuck into looking into constitutions to understand whether a state is secular or not. So methodologically, I will look to a specific survey. I will talk about it, but also I will investigate. I am a heavy consumer of the Arab Opinion Index, but also to Arab barometers and other, and my going research on how people carry out their moral reasonings, taking specific issues related to gender, sexuality, and other things. So specifically, I was asked by Zaid Ayadat, to the head of the Center of Strategic Studies. They have a survey conducted in 2019 about the religion in the public spheres. So the Center for Strategic Studies at the University of Jordan to analyze this survey. It's about 4 countries, Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt, and Tunisia. And you have face-to-face interviews with 5,400 respondents, and I think this is a serious representative sample taking from these 4 countries. So they have one questions about religiosity, a subjective one, whether people feel they are religious, very religious, moderately. So I create an index. I took three more objective, if you like, with the subjective, and I create an religiosity index from this survey, and you will see that around 20% very religious in the Arab world and 60% are religious. So we have around 80% religious. I think this concur with the Arab index, with the Arab barometers, I mean, to show this kind of things. I think non-religious and non-believer is quite small in this survey. By the way, I asked him to look only to the Muslim. I mean, I extract only the Muslim in these 4 countries. I mean, you need to understand that really it's related to the question of Islam as a religion. If you want to look by country, it's very interesting to see that Jordan is particularly very religious. I mean, the third of the population, Lebanon is 2%, okay? Egypt is a quarter. So here, while religious category, those who religious is almost similar. I mean, from 58 Lebanon to 62 to 63 Tunisia. And of course, this moderate religious will be changed also because you have differentiation in very religious. So let me start by when I was going to the left, somebody told me I came only to understand what is congruence. Okay, توافق. So I will start by amazing work done by a sociologist of religion, Mark Chavez, about religious congruence, who defined it as religious ideas hang together. So there is consistency within the religion. Religious beliefs and actions hang together, and this is really the big issue at stake is here. And this is very related to popular culture, and whether religious belief and values indicate stable and chronically accessible dispositions in people. So it's not just because we have a war time or etc. Whether there is a pattern, if you like. So some people try to understand religious congruence only by looking to the religion, if you like, and by looking to the religion. So what is a religion? It's in the same time spirituality, knowledge, ethics, and power. So power by power institutions, I mean, there is always there. So we take all these dimensions and we work on it in a one concept called religiosity. So religiosity have different indicators. We should absolutely distinguish between what is thick indicators, where there is internalization. I mean, we have so much evidence that many of people, for instance, in the West, Muslims, they drink alcohol, but they don't eat pork. I mean, why eating pork? Because it's really related deep in their religiosity. It's where religion defined the pure and the impure. You should read Mary Douglas about her work. I mean, to understand how deep, why many reject this, and of course you have indicators thin. I mean, that they don't do much congruence between action and belief. But what I'm interested here is to highlight that in fact religion is not like a humanism when it comes to impact morality. Why? Because it comes like a package with a training to help poor. You have the mechanism of zakat. You should think about it 1 month a year through fasting and things like that. So I think this is why. I think we need to take religion seriously when we think about how people carry out their religious morality. So all this will impact different forms of congruence. But I think this by itself is really the half of the story. You will never understand religious and moral congruence by looking to this. This is why I create another model where we can understand the current situation in the Arab world, where religious congruence as part of the moral reasoning, why it's produced alienated individuals and polarized elite formations, if you like. And again, I say I am obsessed by this. I think the Arab uprising failed because of specifically the polarization of elite formation. And I think Dr. Azmi in the first lecture, it was the opening lecture, was really rightly emphasizing the importance of the elite formation and how they deal with themselves. So in order to understand, I think religion. What currently problematic, that religion as a knowledge is transmitted as a fixed fiqh, if you like. I work 5 years in a big research, including ethnographic, with the Sharia schools in the Arab world, including here in Qatar, to show that how really how they teach quickly. Fiqh is a segmented fiqh of marriage, fiqh of economic transaction, etc., etc. So it's quickly knowledge come as a fragmented but fixed fiqh and transmitted to people through fatwas. Okay, so. These fatwas is not a product of autonomous religious institution. In fact, you need to understand the problematic relationship between state and religious institution. So. I mean, in some country, historically, you have kind of division of labor. If you take Saudi Arabia, you have a clear division of labor between the political instance and the High Committee of Ulama. High Committee of Ulama, they know that they should not deal with the politics. If they will deal with the politics only through al-wala wal-bara, but they deal with the social. This is why you have a very conservative Saudi, etc. But there is no debate in Saudi Arabia. So it's But then now it's changed, and I think the change in Saudi Arabia, you find it in many authoritarian states where the political institution completely overrule the autonomy of the religious institution. So this is the problematic relation will impact what kind of fatwas you will find, etc. And what is interesting for me that, in fact, the other sphere, the social, the political, the globalization, all that will impact how people will understand religion. So about the religious congruence, and in fact they will impact, and here where I will stop longly, that through practical partial secularization from below. I mean, why this? Practical, because I want to you think about the family of practical theology. I mean, how people understand religion from below. What you find it in many schools in the West about Christianity, I think is a very interesting. So practical, partial. It's not a total secularization. It's a process. Secularization is not anymore against the religion. Is accommodation with the religion. So we should stop to think secularization like moving from religion to science. It's really it's a process there. I mean, people have a complexity of thought, tradition, play, etc. Okay, so this is, if you like, in current situation in the Arab world is, as I said, produce so much alienation and polarization in society. So practical. So now I will come to the survey in these 4 countries: Jordan, Egypt, Tunisia, and Lebanon. So I understand this process from below by 5 aspects. I mean, this is 5 aspects. I found it in the survey. It's not I theorize it. It's really is there. Is the importance of moral reflection in social relationship, reflection on the jurisprudential heritage, al-fiqh, tolerance toward other religions, distinction between civil affairs and personal status, marriage, divorce, etc., and multiplicity of form of religiosity, including, of course, individual religiosity, which is really very important. And you have, it's around 250 questions in this survey. It's really, by the way, it's Dr. Muhammad. It's a very similar. Many of the questions is stolen from Arab opinion. Yeah. So I mean, so. Yeah. Okay. So, and unfortunately, I will not have time to do systematic comparison between the outcome of the Arab index, etc. Actually, there is many questions that Arab index that doesn't ask. It's really about the religion in a public life. So, about the importance of moral reflection in social relationship, of course, I mean, I should really make it clear that moral reflection is not only about religion, it's about globalization, about tradition, everything. So about the questions, it was asked, what makes a person religious? Okay, and of course there is many options, including being honest and trustworthy, treating others well, affinity toward relatives and caring for others, helping the poor and those in need. So 2/3 of the sample, they say, they defined being religious by this. So really, we see how important ethics and morality for defining religion. And actually, it's very similar to the Arab index. You have the also 65% of the respondents did the same thing. For the question, do you prefer to deal with religious or non-religious people, or does it make no difference to you? 71% answered it make no difference, compared to 21% would rather deal with religious people. So the other dimension of this practical secularization from below is the fiqh, reflection on fiqh. This is really where I found it very interesting, that public opinion challenge some established fatwas, including you have a Quranic verse about allowing polygamy, and so about the question, the law should not allow polygamy. You have more than half, 53%, agree on that. if I break it down by country, in Lebanon, 70% agree, Tunisia almost the same, Egypt less, but Jordan a quarter. But still, for me, where is the surprise for me? That if you take away the very religious category, where 95% for them, they believe that law should not contradict Sharia, the polygamy. Religious and moderately religious and non-religious, almost there is no significant correlation between religiosity and the attitude vis-a-vis the polygamy. And I think this is really I am not normative to say this is good or not good, but I mean it's a very interesting to find that people challenge polygamy even being religious. The same thing for the right. It's very interesting. It's not the same thing for the right of women for equal inheritance. Only 40% agree about the right. And this is, I study extensively Tunisia. I will talk about my study in Tunisia in the end, where all the public opinion about the inheritance, you see the majority, more than the majority, in favor of keeping the Sharia-informed way of inheritance. So if you like, this is why partial secularization. So some issues really break from the established fatwas and the other is not. For the question about married women have the right to work outside the household, so 80% almost they agree on that. Okay. The third dimension, tolerance toward other religion. I think what is really very interesting with the questions that, like, our children should not be allowed to learn about other religion. So 55% didn't agree, and religiosity, in fact, here affect the rate of agreement in a different degree. For the question, those who belong to other religions should not have the same right to me. 64% reject this, okay, and only 30% agree. And religiosity had an effect on lowering the rate of rejection in Jordan, for instance, while had no effect in other countries, Tunisia, Egypt, and Lebanon. So all this is need of course interpretation. Why here and not there? But again, what I try to show you that how complex the religiosity will impact the attitude of people or the religious congruence. The same thing for the distinction between civil affairs and personal status. As I told you, I didn't design the survey. I found, for instance, this question with the presence of the Quran/Bible, there is no need for man-made laws. As a very awkward questions. I mean, in Germany, in any country, you have man-made laws. So 3/4 agree. So no need. So I think this is analytically extremely weak. But I show you that this is where hard secularism, if you like, ethos, impacts some social science. I mean that either or. I mean, this is example how we think that either man-made law or Quran and Bible. So about the question whether the state can intervene through the people's representatives, parliament, in personal status law, marriage and divorce, 67% agreed. and 28% opposed. It's really, this is completely the first one. It shows that people, they are happy with the personal status and maybe Sharia courts, but at the same time, they want the intervention of the state. So this complexity, what I try to show. The last dimension of this partial secularization is the multiplicity form of religiosity, including individual religiosity. I really work on that for many years, and I think I grew up in Syria. I mean, I do remember when I was young man how everyone is. You have two gurus, Sheikh Al-Albani, Sheikh Al-Albani, and Sheikh Al-Bouti, rahimahumullah. They all either here or there. I mean, I see around me my relatives. I mean, those who listen to Al-Qarni, the other day to a Sufi Sheikh in Ghana, and it's amazing this individual religiosity and low trust in a religious institution, relatively speaking. I think I compare it to political trust. I mean, you have more trust in religious than in political instance, but it still is quite low. So what is my conclusion? About particularly this practical secularization from below, that it's a soft, it's partial, yet unhappy process. I mean, it creates many alienations. So let me conclude about this issue. So secularization cannot be understood by linking it only to the degree of religiosity or non-religiosity. Secularization, both from above and from below, is insufficient to reach liberal ideals. Liberal ideals is how to balance between freedom and equality, and I say this is also Islamic ideals. I mean, I absolutely. I mean, what again in the last 10 days, what Dr. Azmi say about this false dichotomy between Islam and democracy, it's really so misleading. So if you like, insufficient to reach liberal ideas and to democratize the state and society, and to democratize the state and society. Other factors will also have a tremendous impact on that. So, answer to question regarding freedoms and democracy were not affected by the degree of religiosity. In my paper, I analyzed almost 10 questions. It's really it's very clear. I mean, it's not being religious. You will have less need for freedom of expression, etc. So meaning that objective conditions linked to the absence of social justice and or authoritarianism have more impact role than religiosity in shaping social, economic, and political position and attitude. I will, So I will go to my conclusion, and this is really where I will have. So if you like, if really want perspective situation, if you like, a wishful thinking. How religious congruence as a part of moral reasoning, how can make less alienated individuals in our society and less polarized society. Religion, if you like, specifically the knowledge, should be first understood as ethics and not as a fiqh. So you understand religion as a ethical, and I think Taha Abdul Rahman in insisting in ethics. I mean, his work, I mean, is very interesting. I disagree with many of his conclusion, but I think putting emphasis on ethics is very important, and then from ethics, you go to deal with the fiqh in maqasidic way, looking to the high objective of Sharia, of this ethics. It means that you need absolutely to deal with the impact of social sciences, etc., to do maqasidic fiqh. Already with this, with going from, yeah, by going here, it's not really about only religious, okay, religion. So, in fact, this is can only done not by a goodwill of the religious institution. So we don't ask. This is if you like, my last paper in Al-Arabi Al-Jadid is about authoritarian. It's about authoritarian innovation of Islam. I mean, okay. So it's Saudi Arabia example, for instance. So to show that this doesn't work alone. I mean, you need impact of a soft secularism. I mean, how, if you like, a kind of distinction between politics and religion and separation. But I mean, but if you like, religion as ethics always can play a role on politics, but not politics with a capital P. So soft secularity, minimal neutrality of states. I think again, Dr. Azmi talked about it. Cécile Laborde, the French philosopher, advocate for it. Okay, and of course a conception. I mean, a kind of liberal project conception of justice. So all this will really play a role how the religious will create these things. And from below, of course, this partial practical secularization. But this is very important that in fact you need public reason, and Rawlsian way amended by Habermas and Mauve. So this public reason, it means that you need always a debate about religious things and other things, about not only because it's, remember, it's only written. It's a part of my work where I am interested more in moral reasoning. So I am not giving a high privilege for the if you like, religion as ethics. I think with the global convergence, I think humanism, globalization, so bringing many morality to us. So this is, if you like, the model that I think where we can understand this all this compartmentalized spheres, not as a one these spheres as part of a common logic. If you like, just I will give example on that. My work, I work with my colleague Azam Tomi. We analyze 70 YouTube debates about gender equality and inheritance law in Tunisia. Just to remind you, I think in 2018, President Sibsi ordered a commission to change this law. He invited 10 really scholars, if you like, some civil society and human rights activists, but no Islamists, if you like, no one from Zaytuna. Except somebody who teaches psychology, not religious science. It's clear, I mean, again, in Sibsi, how he see the compartmentalization. So the report produced, and when was published, it was a big debate. It's very interesting that it was a very smooth debate. To appreciate this debate, it was very different from one statement sent by Al-Azhar to say those who think that we can change the Quranic verse, they are out of the committee. Hum kuffar. Yani, it's
while if you look how the Islamists in Tunisia deal with the Ghannouchi, for instance, he say, look, I mean, we understand society is a pluralistic society can. We need a pluralistic way of doing it, but the divergence with the report is what is by default. So what is by default? It means if there is a conflict within the family, there is a law where order specific things. So, if you like, what is very interesting, I found that the three repertoire of arguments used both by Islamists and not by Islamists. Actually, in the paper, I don't say Islamists, because Munsif al-Marzouqi was against the law, against changing the law. So it's not, if you like, the two camps, those in favor of changing the law and against the law. Both they use the same repertoires, textual, legal, and sociological. I mean, of course, I am much closer sociologically to the argument of the report. But actually, what is interesting that the other, they present sociological argument. For instance, they say that in the family, still women play, there is a division of labor within the family, and the financial contribution is still in the shoulder of the brothers and not the sisters when for the parents. Again, I'm not defending that, but just to say they are not throwing a verse and to say this is a verse, that's it. So I think, and what is very interesting that the report, the first 3 pages of the report, and I am sure written by Abdul Hamid al-Sharfi, I know his language. It's really, he used maqasid al-Sharia. He didn't use to say, Sedaw, in the name of Sedaw, we want to change the law. He say, look, in Sharia, historically, there is a verse about slavery, and it was abolished. Why not abolished? It was amended, if you like. Why not this? It means that really, it was a very interesting debate. And I think Tunisia, this is why I'm still believing, in spite of what happened in the last 2 years, the Tunisian exception, this fluidity of elite formation and negotiations, that is example how you have a less alienated and less polarized society. I will move to my last 2 points. So, in fact, if you like, let me put it all. My work on bridging between Sharia science and social science, in fact, this is what I advocate after I see how much you have polarization, how much the Sharia people really completely ignorant of what is social science, basic of social science, and I am sure in many social science faculty and departments, they don't have the language to talk with religious people. So I think there is problem inside. So if we take the ethics like 2 sources, religion, but moral philosophy, so you will have, of course, something heavy in the society, whether it is fiqh, fixed fiqh, قطعيات in tradition, everything. This is only, if you like, with collaboration of our knowledge on science and our knowledge on the tradition, Sharia, for example, we will have a public reason. We will have a debate in public spheres. Otherwise, will not be a debate in public spheres. It will be compartmentalized. I mean, again, I mean, as I study the knowledge production in the Arab world, I know where is a niche of hardliner left, where you find no reasoning of an Islamist inside, and other Islamists where you don't find. I mean, it's a very problematic how this is done. So this will produce law, norms, and fiqh, and then, of course, law will go for citizens, but always because we live in pluralistic society that the faqih has the right to say, I will advocate something for the believer different from the law. The law will allow mixity in the schools. The faqih will say no, for pious people should not go to mix. So this system allow this. And finally, this is if you like, I keep extrapolating. Now I will go out of the Arab world and show you like how I understand this polarization, not only in the Arab world, but really worldwide. Now we are in a crisis. Not only here, but also in Italy today, to understand why people vote for Meloni, you need to understand that the elite, whether politicians, labor unions leaders, human rights activists, journalists, social media influencers, bloggers, academics, etc., this elite is so much influenced by neoliberal capitalism and what Eva Illouz talk about emotional capitalism. It means that so much commodified. So it's nothing now a free-floating freedom without the impact of this capitalism. So you have two elites. One elite, we should understand it as highly symbolic capitalist. I mean, the academics, take the academics. I mean, our pattern of life, our travel, there is a study in the United States showing that where is the Democrat is, where is the inequality is more. So they become in a standing that they cannot anymore influence people. They cannot tell them about equality if they are in an equal situation. So this elite as a highly symbolic capitalist and highly individualist. So you find it among left and specifically cultural left, but you find it among right-wing people. Okay, in the other side, where, for instance, religious people, communitarian people are there. These elite are lightly symbolic capitalist, but highly communitarians. So you find them more in the right than in the left. Now, these produce, they advocate for classically conservative. Here, this is what I argue, that they are classically liberal. They are for the civil liberties. They are for human rights as a universal, but politically illiberal because they condescend the conception of the good life for the others. Because the whole political liberalism is based on allowing the multiple conceptions of the good life and not while we agree all in the conception of justice. And for instance, just to give you example, the debate about the Doha here and homosexualities, if you like, this cultural left wanted to say everything is part of the conception of justice. It means that acceptance of gays, recognition, social recognition, institutional recognition, and visibilities. And I think they are, it's not true. I mean, only acceptance and social recognition is part of the conception of justice. If you like, no discrimination in Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now the other is a question of conception of the good life. It means that should be debated in the public spheres in the society, and at certain point to reach the maturity to pass it. Okay, so this is, if you like, I think we need a politically liberal project. I put it communitarian. Maybe I don't advocate communitarian in the Arab world. They are already over excessively communitarian, but I will advocate it for France to be more communitarian. Okay, so politically communitarian liberal project based on what's something I advocate on it in International Sociological Association is dialogical sociology, but also I want these people with their normativity, maybe my normativity is like them, but I want them to be less condescending other conception of the good life, and able to dialogue with them and to stop the moving of the world into voting more right and more hierarchical, polarized elite. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Professor, for this very insightful, rich, and amazing presentation. I will now open the floor for questions. Okay. Please go ahead, Doctor.
Okay, shukran, Sari. Thank you, Sari. It's really an intriguing presentation. I will start with what I agree with you and then move on to what I disagree with you. So it will be. So I agree with you that religiosity and its presence in Arab societies is a crucial issue and should be approached and be repositioned in the public sphere as a debated issue. And I agree with you that it is overloaded with different, and I also agree about the polarization, but I don't necessarily see it as something to be corrected. Now I want to ask you several comments in two clusters. One cluster is historical, the other one is kind of structural analysis of the religiosity. I wonder why you didn't position religiosity in a historical frame. Because as we know, religiosity changes with time. Its expressions, its practices, and other things. This brings me to the other comment. Today, religiosity is kind of an overdetermination in the Arab, at least public discourse. It's as like al-fusha wal-ammiyya. Each historical term, it surfaces and it takes different meaning. So what I'm suggesting is to look at it as a performativity rather than as content-bound phenomena. Because I was wondering about the sociological insights that you are trying to reach here. You were more oriented toward a kind of action research. You want to offer a plan or a model through which we can resolve this disparity between secular and religious trends, social movements, elites, and so on. What about the performativity? In fact, in my opinion, religiosity has, in the Arab world at least, has to do with performativity, not with the content. And now I was wondering if I was investigating violence, should I agree with the violence content? Because you you investigate religiosity and you start from what the religious subject is saying. And so what is your positionality vis-a-vis religiosity? And why not zooming out and seeing the secular and the religious as expressions of the same deeper structures of the Arab society? I see religiosity as a symptom in that sense, and hence the performativity. And finally, I really didn't understand why you excluded the other religious communities in the Arab world, such as Christian, Jews, other religious faiths. I think it's crucial to incorporate them into this, especially that these different communities are deeply rooted historically in this region, and they have a very formative in the intercommunal relations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's take more questions. Please go ahead.
Well, thanks for the lecture. I thought it was very thought-provoking. So I have two questions. The first is about your kind of survey methods and the survey results that you got. So I was wondering whether you accounted for other factors that might influence whether someone's going to be more tolerant, for example. So there's a lot of research that suggests that it's actually levels of education that make someone more kind of liberal or more tolerant, that really it doesn't matter whether they are more religious or less religious, or whether their gender or their race, that it's actually education that's explaining the way that they think about politics. So I don't know whether you were analyzing the levels of education that these people had. So that's the first question. The second question is about clarifying this phrase that you use, classically liberal but politically illiberal. So I wasn't sure what you meant by this, because I mean, as you mentioned, like, you're very much inspired by Rawls. The idea that Rawls is trying to get at is when you have conflict between secular forms of reasoning and religious forms of reasoning, you prioritize the secular forms of reasoning because it's the kind of reasoning that can be accepted by everyone, or can be accepted by more people than religious forms of reasoning. And so you have, I think, it's unclear how we should make sense of the conflict, because there's times when the religious form of reasoning will directly conflict with the secular form of reasoning. And one good example is vaccines. So there's a lot of vaccine misinformation, usually by more likely for people to be religious, or more likely to believe in conspiracy theories. So do we really want this form of reasoning to be prioritized than secular forms of reasoning? So how do you make sense of situations when they conflict?
Sari, do you prefer to take all the questions one shot or three by three?
Maybe I will reply to this too, because they raise a fundamental issue, and
Okay.
then we will continue.
Okay, thank
Okay, I will try to be brief to be on time. Thank you, Ismail. Well, simply my message, first of all, religion is not only performativity; it's also content. I mean, I like the work of Muhammad Bami. Muhammad Bami, his book on Islam as a life words, showing that Islam, there is something as a practice, as experience, in a phenomenological meaning, still influence the Arab Islamic countries, but not Islam as a standardized rules, as a fiqh, as etc. So I think there is something still important in religion that influence us, not as a performance, but all. And I think when I mean, my work on this classically liberal and politically illiberal, I showed that always they talk about religion in a negative way. I mean, why only violence? I mean, really, no, I'm not saying you, not necessarily, but just to say...
Performance is not negative. Performance is excellent.
No. Performance is not negative. But I mean, the example about the violence. I mean, religion for me also is... I mean, I study faith-based organizations. They are amazing. I mean, many countries survives because of this specifically group.
Sari, maybe my example about violence, sorry about the interruption, maybe my example about the violence was misunderstood. I didn't explain it right.
Yeah.
Now, when I study violence, I don't start from violence per se. Now, when you study religiosity, you started from religiosity per se. My question in this regard is your positionality vis-a-vis religiosity. No, I'm not comparing religiosity with violence.
Yeah.
No, this is not the issue.
Yeah. No, but I mean, again, it's the model. I thought it's absolutely no need to start from religiosity, and this is also to Robert. I mean, I am not privileging. No, not Robert. Sorry. I am not privileging this particularly. I think the whole model is to say you need to factor everything, including education, economics, ethos, in which political regime is, and so on. So if you like. I'm not privileging, but I started by arguing that how the elite think religion is part of the creation of polarized society. If you think religion is everything, Al-Islam هو الحل, Islam is a solution, or think that religion is something passenger, and we need to push it out of society because we are scientists, we are modernists, we are etc. I mean, both. I mean, this kind of discourse and the practice because military can come to save one group against the other group, as we saw in Egypt, I mean, is problematic. And I will show that how we study this religiosity. I'm not giving a specific privilege to this. Now Ismail, about why I excluded deliberately. I mean, I did analysis with the Christian, I mean, because there is no Jews here. Only in the sample Christian and non-believer and Muslims, and in these 4 countries. Remember, I'm talking about 4 countries. There is no Jews in Lebanon. Okay, so this is make more precise about my argument. Now, classically liberal and politically illiberal. Exactly, I'm not saying that society will not have a conflicting and competing values, but there is a way, a specific way, how to deal with these conflicting values. Just to remind you, those who were against the vaccine, and there is 2-3 studies about it, much more leftists like Giorgio Agamben than religious authorities. So again, I think this is why I consider this category. They are so arrogant because they have the symbolic capitalism that they don't want to debate this issue in the public spheres with the others. Of course, they want to write alone to condescending the other conception of the good life, but they don't want to dialogue with them. And this is, if you like, this is why I consider them as politically illiberal, because political liberalism is a very important this process of public reason and what kind of argument you bring in the public sphere. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Aziz.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sari. This is all really quite fascinating, and I also have a certain tendency to think in terms of diagrams, so I found that really very, very suggestive indeed. Now, I want to go back to the comments made about overdetermination, and that was made by our and normativity and so forth. Anyway, an aside, I think this conception of religion, the phenomenological conception of religion, presume a certain type of insight which is not translatable discursively. Therefore, this is something we can't talk about. That is to say, I believe that ultimately these are sentimentalist statements rather than conceptual analyses. And I would personally prefer to keep them on the side because they are in a certain way unsayable and unmeasurable. That's probably a very fundamental methodological difference. Now, what I very much appreciate is that you are gathering concrete empirical information about religion. There is a hell of a lot which is said about religion in the Arab world. To my mind, the vast majority of statements are impressionistic or ideologically inflected, with very little actually concrete research about religious behaviors and so on. And there's very, very little indeed. So in this measure, this is really very much appreciated. But what I do wonder is why you work at you are working as a sociologist at the level of perceptions, that is to say, perceptions as revealed in answers to questions, rather than at the level of actual practices. Take polygamy, for instance. Polygamy is not prevalent. It is practiced. It has regional and class profiles, right? And therefore, the matter of polygamy cannot really be pitched at the level of do you accept or don't you want to accept because of doctrinal reasons. In many milieus, polygamy is considered indecent. One doesn't do it. Quite apart from leading to conflict between families, interfamilies and intrafamilies, right? But it is something which is indecent. And it has been for a very, very long time indeed. Having said this, I want to just connect it to something else, which, I mean, you are talking about secularization from below. I would rather formulate it in a different way. Secularization from below actually makes assumptions about a prior stage of religiosity below, which I would very strongly contest, both on sociological and historical grounds. It is not that there is secularization from below. The parsing of religion as ethics is ubiquitous. It's in all societies, past and present, right? So it's not really in itself a very distinctive element in this secularization. What I would say is that much of the analysis is conducted, your analysis, is conducted under the impact of the Islamic notion, Islamist, not Islamic, notions of Arab society and polity that has become fairly hegemonic in the region. So if somebody were to be conducting this kind of research 30 years ago, they would start from very different assumptions. They will not make prior assumptions of this kind about religiosity. And as a historian, I know very well that the religious sphere, or the religious field rather, to be more technical, actually did exist, but it was structured and it did not comprise the whole of society. It had points of contact, it had points of incursion, it had points of influence, but it was not the sum total of it does not account for social behavior, right? Neither present, nor past, nor even medieval, be it in the Arab world or in Europe. This is, I'm talking from the point of view of modern historical studies or new historical studies. So, what I would rather speak about, actually, is what I'd rather indicate is that what you have been saying and the assumptions that you have been making are actually saturated by a type of discourse which I would rather call Islamization rather than secularization, in the sense that analogously with Europe at the time of the Reformation, when religion was actually made a part of daily life, very meticulously, with very, very careful work, all across the board, both in the countries which became Protestant and in many countries which remained Catholic, right? That what we have been seeing over the last 30 years is not, or what you are describing, is not simply a pre-existent condition, thinking about religion, but actually the result of a process of Islamization. I would call it Islamization, in the sense of broadening the field which we call the religious field, broadening its salience, broadening its influence, broadening its presence into places which it had not formally occupied. Yeah? And when I talk of the religious field, I'm talking of a very distinct field, that is to say, analytically distinguishable, because there are many types of social action which take place outside. In fact, the vast majority. And I think a kind of the existence of a very, very broad, autonomous, secular field of social action, past and present, is something which needs to be taken into account rather than making assumptions about the religious basis of social behavior. And I would just to end, just a remark on some recent research. There was a thesis about, I think, 3 years ago at Harvard University in which the student, the author, proved very conclusively the distinction of types of action between the secular and the religious is an element which saturates medieval Arabic religious writings. All right? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Aziz. Dr. Basil?
Okay, I'll be very brief since we don't have time. First of all, Sari, I want to flag the book of my colleague Ammar Shmaili, Beyond Piety and Trust, which deals with a lot of the questions you are asking. My question is brief. I'm a bit uneasy with the way you are dealing with using concepts from the West in a very comfortable way. And so throughout your lecture, I was thinking of Charles Taylor's Modern Social Imaginaries and the story he tells us there about the rise of modernity and secularization in the West. But Taylor's story has a material component, and this is what happens in the market and how that gives rise to a certain public sphere. Your talk was immaterial in the sense that there is no materiality. Immaterial, I mean material. So I was wondering where is the connection with the material in all this, and how does that play a role in promoting the kind of public sphere that you hope will create the kind of dialogue? It really appears very late in your talk when you bring in neoliberalism in the last slide. But I'm really wondering if just remaining on the level of the ideational is enough to tell the kind of story you want to tell. Thank you.
Professor, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Sari. Two very quick points or questions. The first one is more methodological. Although people who know me in this room know that I'm, very strong advocate for quantitative research and surveys. However, for studying religiosity, and primarily because religiosity is a practice, is mumarasa rather than perception, I found it very difficult and not very persuasive that you're actually capturing religiosity. You are capturing, as Aziz said, more like perceptions, and perceptions can be very, illusion and create. So, you cannot really do much of perceptions. So this is the first comment, or maybe more critique about the methodology. And then the second point is more substantial about this triangle of secularization, religiosity, and morals, where morals actually in between these two things. And I want to bring it to the table, or to the discussion, Al-Masari and Ali Izzat Bekovich, where actually Izzat Bekovich, I really intrigued by his approach about the relationship between secularization and morality, and in the same time the relationship between morals, akhlaq, and religion. And he said rightly, and I agree with him, that you cannot actually understand or make any sense of morals without religion, because in a purely or complete secular society, morals do not make any sense. They actually go against the individualistic approach of these individuals in a very secular society. And as Nietzsche said, if a religious person cares about poor and weak individuals. Nietzsche says that oppress the poor, the weak and step over their bodies. So in a secular society, they don't, for example, sacrifice, personal sacrifice towards, an idea or others do not make any sense if not performed within a religious context. In a secular set or secular context, sacrifice towards others do not make any sense. Why you should kill yourself or sacrifice yourself or your money for giving sadaqah, for example. In a secular, individualistic, capitalist society, they do not make any sense. For that reason, and this is my final point about this triangle, if you bring them together and blend them, you don't get something new, where secularism, whether they're from above or from below, can play any role in understanding morals. In the same way, you cannot bring religiosity and secularism and say, yeah, we can create something new, because they are either or none. And this is my final point. Thank you, Sari.
Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Professor Hanafi. I really enjoyed the presentation. I found it brilliant. And what I really enjoyed the most is that the approach religion as ethics. In your work on Arabic societies, have you found anything related to the approach or perception, religion as ideology shaping the political culture? Thank you.
If you please go ahead, because I think we have a long list now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aziz and others, Nabil and Dr. Basil. Look, the paper is about why, how elite in the Arab society understand the secular and the religious. And the whole paper, this is why privilege perception somehow, and I did a lot of study, including ethnographical studies about the practice, if you like, but the objective of this paper is really to show that there is a discourse of white and black, and this is, in my sense, so misleading, because while this is white and black, society is moving. And this elite should look down to it. The debate, just to give you, I'm analyzing something I didn't yet publish about. I took all the academic discourse about secularism, and I found in Tunisia 28 papers I analyzed. Among 28 papers, there is 25 where they hint to say Tunisia not secular because there is article in the constitution about Islam. I mean, it's 162 countries in the world. They have article about Islam, about religion. So I think what I try to show that there is a way of separating the secular and the religious. I think is misleading of understanding the praxis of everyday life of people. Of course, I took the perception as argument, but I mean, what I am developing is I'm going to the practice. So this is, if you like, now the sentimental versus conceptuals. I think I call late modernity is emotion turn of our modernity. I mean, the whole problem with the I mean, and here, for instance, for a long time we use the word emotion and affection in a positive sense. I see many bad sense. I mean, the council culture, the Wikism is a serious phenomenon where it's based on sentiment. Sentiment of whom? I mean, there is a power relation of these people. So your major point, Aziz, really is important, whether it is Islamization or secularization. Here, actually, I should have acknowledged your important work, العلمانية من منظور آخر. And I learned a lot about how secularism was really immersed in the Arab and Islamic culture. This is very important. But I think now with this polarization, religion is confined in a specific place where, yes, I think inherent part of the secularization to acknowledge that religious arguments and justifications is inherent part of our moral reasonings. And I think the whole debate between Rawls, Habermas, and Maeve Cook is about the importance. I mean, two things: that our arguments, religion is always part of it. I mean, if I take the veil question in France, I mean, it's why they cannot see why they can't see the veil in the street as something awkward, because their conception of the secular and the religion is very Christian. Christianity under Reformations, they reduce it to conscience in personal conscience plus ritual in the church. So there is no place for any manifestation of religion in the street. This is why, or in the school. This is their very conception of laïcité in France is a very Christian for me. So my work is really is to reveal that religion is always there. Martha. I mean, many work today. Charles Taylor. I mean, Charles Taylor. It's amazing, his work. I mean, the secular age. I mean, I read it. I spent 3 weeks reading it. It's to show how Catholicism he wanted to show not only but how is imminent. If you like, yes, of course there is materiality playing role, but this is really persistent in spite of all the attempt of secularization. So if you like,
Dr. Sari,
less
than 5 minutes.
So I will. So really, I mean, again, this dichotomy, Islamization or secularization. Why not? I mean, today, how to bridge really discourse, how to bridge between elite formation without acknowledging that today in Tunisia, the question whether Islam is a religion of the Tunisian or not, I think is irrelevant. This is what I'm trying to say. It's irrelevant. What is relevant, how you negotiate a real problem, real material problem, social justice, where some people will come and say, look, our social justice, we want to replicate an experience that we think Islamically ethical. And those who say no, we inspire by the Marxism, and this is what I'm trying to say. It's yes, you of course you need to broaden the religious, because the religious in the heart secularism was confined to the private sphere. I wanted to stop lying to ourselves and to say religion should be like any argument in the public spheres. Of course, should be what Maeve Cook described like practical, non-authoritarian practical reasonings. I mean, what Ghanouchi did with this debate is non-practical, non-authoritarian practical reasoning. They refer to the social, to argument. It's very different from Al-Azhar. Al-Azhar, he put the religion as an authoritarian practical reasoning. This is where there is a problem with the liberal, with the category of so if you like, the category of liberal, it's really a method how society reach, if you like, the conflicting good life, and how they reach the one conception of justice. Of course, I define myself as a universalist, and as a someone, I see Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a universal. This is why I am liberal, but I will not extend it to make it like if you put a veil, you are illiberal. This is how we talk today. So, sorry, I need really 1 minute to Nabil. And I think so you see the same thing, Nabil. It's not either or. I mean that you cannot, the whole methodology, I talk about it, is not to separate the secular from religious. Because when people say we want this, because there is a religious inside, there is a sociological inside, so it's not either or. So secularization is thought historically by some strand of it as anti-religion, I don't see it. Why we don't accept that our religious reasoning is so much influenced by materiality, so much influenced by other morality, and let's all this debate of course you were always afraid about qat'iyat. I mean, you can put it, and you can as a group to say, look, even if I don't succeed through public reason to pass it as a law, I will advocate it for my believer. But I think there is no way to now we are in a nation state where you have a citizenship as a unit of analysis, not to think in terms of everything should be debated in the public spheres.
Thank you very much. I think we're
can we take?
we are running of the data because we have other sessions. Okay, last one, please go ahead.
Okay, I want to take, not me.
Voice, please.
Yeah, let's.
Okay, please go ahead.
So I actually have two comments, which we have been talking about the past few days. But I think the distinction that you make between the issues that concern the question of justice and those which concern different conceptions of the good life can itself be unjust if we do not think of justice as the right of every individual to practice what they conceive of as being a good life, or a life worth living. Of course, as long as this practice does not infringe on someone else's practice. Now, to be able to practice your conception of the good life as an individual, you need a law that protects this and protects you against a community that may force their conception of the good life upon you. And here religion becomes restricted to the private sphere. And the private sphere means that of the individual, not of the family or any other community. And I have just one other comment. In relation to how religious groups are using scientific arguments, like you said, they use psychological arguments to explain why there shouldn't be equality in inheritance. Maybe they are using scientific arguments, but that does not mean that there is no gap between secular reasoning and religious reasoning. Both could be using scientific arguments, but maybe with different aims in mind. So this is what creates the gap, not the method, but the aim that one has in mind. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, Omar, I will use my authority as a chair.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Wajd. No, actually, I think many. I mean, the conception of the good lives. I mean, this pluralistic conception. You can debate it in the public spheres in order really to be in bar with the conception of justice, in bar of the conception of justice. But my criticism, for instance, this is why I criticize that we create a category like gender neutrality without thinking about consequences. Why we don't think about consequences? Because there is a hegemonic cultural left in a certain countries that they embed their worldview, and they want to in a good life, and they wanted to impose it on the others. So yes, absolutely, I agree with you that while we are debating different conception of the good life, we need to be sure that this doesn't infringe with the conception of the good. Of the justice. So okay.
Thank you.
I can say more, but I.
Thank you very much, Professor Sari. I just need to apologize for our followers on social media. We have a lot of questions, but unfortunately we don't have any more time. I ask you to join me to thank Professor Sari for this amazing presentation. This concludes our public lectures for this winter school, and we hope to see you on social media.